Okay, so this is week 2 of the class. So one thing is I need to mention is that before I'd said the class was 8 weeks, and it's not, it's 12, which is correct in the schedule and correct in the syllabus. I don't know what I was talking about last time. Okay, so yeah, so that's dealt with. Homework for chapter 2 should have been turned in already. Okay, so hopefully you've got that working. If you were a day or two late, not gonna be a big deal. Takes us a while to get used to all this stuff. Okay, so other than that, let's see, the schedule is the schedule. Let me show you this here, course schedule here. So this should be out there on Moodle. This week we're going to be covering chapter 3, and then 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7, and then 8, and then an exam. Okay, so that's where we're headed right away. Okay, so this video is a day late, and I didn't have email access for all weekend, and I'm not sure how long before that. I don't know what happened exactly. I don't know if someone tried to hack my account or not. I was just locked out 100%. My password was fine, but there were too many wrong attempts. So I couldn't get to Moodle. I couldn't get to anything. So thanks to, I think it was Kara, somebody had texted me and I'd asked her to put the word out. So if you don't hear from me on email for whatever reason, the email has been fickle. It's not the first time my account's been locked out for no apparent reason. So always keep in mind that you have access to my cell phone number. You can call or you can text, and that's the surest way to get a hold of me. Okay. The other thing I will say is that this week we had Thursday was our meeting last week. So let's try this week Friday at I think 7. Let me double make sure that I don't have another commitment at that point, but we'll try Friday this week. We'll try to alternate back around to make sure everybody that has questions is able to get there. That's the goal. Okay. I keep looking at the screen, but I should be looking there at the camera, but I'm not sure. That may be weird. So I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. Okay. So anyway, so we're going to continue on this week in our discussion of Java programming. Okay. And some of you I know are having some issues with Eclipse. I know of 2 people, and I'm not sure what is causing either one. They're both on Windows. I don't have a Windows computer handy. I do have one that I just need to plug in and get back going. It's an older one. I'll try to get it installed to see what's going on. But in the meantime, if you can't get things to run and you can't submit both the Java.java file and the .class file, just go ahead and submit the Java file. Okay, it's uncompiled, and that'll be fine for now. Okay. Okay, so let's go on into chapter 3. And if you have questions, you can always let me know. Again, these are not meant to be a full explanation of the material. This is meant to be kind of a heads up as to some of the points that you may want to consider. You still want to read the material yourself, come Friday this week with questions, and then move from there. Okay. So let's go ahead. Where do I want to share first? I don't want to share anything yet, so we'll talk about this in a second. Okay, so the idea of this chapter then is going to be a further explanation of classes. So we talked about classes last time, and a little bit about object-oriented programming in chapters 1 and 2. But we were mostly using other classes. When we used a scanner object, we created an instance of the scanner class. Okay, so what we're doing this time, we're going to create our own classes to be able to solve problems that are custom to us. Okay, and they're going to use this account class for the bulk of this. Okay, and this starts. Let me find the page number here. Hopefully everybody has their textbooks now. If not, I'm sure they're going to be on the way soon. Yeah, so where I want to start here is with the UML diagram. We mentioned UML a little bit before. I think it's maybe in chapter 1. So let's start with that, what these diagrams do for us. And they're just a shorthand that describes a class responsibility, or what a class is supposed to do for us. Okay. So, for example, this account class we're going to be creating, at least the first version of it. Okay, we're going to draw a rectangle for our UML diagrams. And it's very possible in the test I could give you a UML class diagram. UML is this massive thing. Okay, UML is a whole world of diagrams. This is a UML, Unified Modeling Language class diagram. Okay, and it starts with the name of the class, which is account over here. Okay, the next section is going to be for our member data or attributes, whatever we call it. Okay, in this case, we're going to have a private, that's minus the private name, and it's going to be of type string. Okay, we're then going to have a constructor account, which takes a name, and I need more room here, string. Okay, I think it's the biggest one. Okay, so again, that's account. It has the same name as the class the constructors do. It takes a name, and that's a colon string. That's of type string, capital S for string. Okay. Then we have plus, because that's going to be a public function, although it doesn't need to be read. A set name, which takes name as a parameter, which is a string. And then we have get name, which takes no parameters, but returns a string. Okay. So when we're defining our functions or our classes, it's almost always the case that we want to make our member data or our attributes or instance variables, they also call it. We want to make these private. Okay, that's right in here. We want to make them private because we don't want other programs to be able to get to our data without us having some rules there. Okay, and because they're private, we can determine how the outside world sees them. We can protect them. Okay, and a diagram the books use, if we have here name is our data, okay, then we're going to have an outside layer. The outside layer is going to have the set name function. It's going to have the get name function. Okay, so the only way to get to the name is through this function down here, and you can determine how much you give away as far as the information goes. Okay, then if somebody wants to change the name, they have to go through the set name function, and you can determine the rules under which they can change it. Okay, so that's the idea we're talking about there. Okay, that's why we make it private. Because if we make it private, we need these two functions. The get name is known as an accessor function. The set name is known as a mutator. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of where we're headed. So I think that'll do for now. We can go ahead and get into Eclipse and start with the coding of this. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of this coding. Again, these videos are going to be longer early on. As we get further along, I'm less likely to do this many examples. Okay. But this time we will. I know folks are still having trouble. So here we are in dear old Eclipse. Okay, and again, I'm going to do a file, new class. I'm going to keep it in my same source folder. I'm not going to add a package at all. Let's just use the default. Should be okay. Okay. I'm going to call this one account test. Okay. It'll have a .java automatically. Okay. I want to add a public static void main. Okay. Finish and should get started. Okay. So again, you probably want to put in some comments here. I'm not going to, for the sake of time, but put in there what you need. Okay. And we're going to need our import java.util.scanner. Okay. So wait, I have gone too far. I thought that was weird. We had that before anything else. Yep, I'm on the wrong one. Scratch all that. Before we have the test, we have to have the actual file. So let me go back and do a file, new class account. Yeah, it was looking really weird that we didn't have this, but anyway, it's been a long week, long weekend. I was traveling this weekend. So with this one, we don't need a public static void main. Okay, so this is our class definition. You can't run it on its own. It's got to be ran with something else. Okay, so I'm going to finish it like that. That's all it's going to say. It's going to be our account class definition. Okay, so for that, we're going to start here with our private variable of type string called name. Okay, and that should have indented for me, but it didn't, oddly enough. So we'll indent ourselves. Okay. So that's the member data that we have. That was on that top box of our UML diagram. Okay. And now we have our accessor function. So it's going to be a public. It's going to be a void. A void function means it doesn't return anything. Okay. It's not a void. Sorry, I'm doing the wrong one. It's going to return a string. Okay. And it's going to be the get name, but it takes no parameters. Okay. So public string get name bracket. Notice that it puts in the bottom bracket for us. Okay. And what isn't it like? Oh, I'm not returning anything yet, which is correct. So all I'm going to do is return. Okay. So again, we're not going to run this within our own account class or an instance of that class. We're going to run it from another program, for our account test program that I started over here. Okay. So it can't get to name. So we're going to have to return name to it. Okay. So I'm just going to return name. That's it. That's all I'm doing. That's all this function does. Okay. Again, this class wouldn't need that. But if we're in a different class accessing it, we would need that. We'll see how that works in a minute. Okay. Then we have our mutator function. Spell accessor wrong? Huh, no, it just doesn't like the word accessor. That's what it's called. It's a mutator function. Okay. Again, it's public. This time it's a void. It doesn't return anything. And that is going to be our set name. Okay. But this time it has to take a parameter. It has to take a string called name. Okay. And don't worry about the warnings that pop up as you're typing because you're not done yet. Okay. So what this one's going to do, it's going to let, now we have two names here. We have the name up here. We have this variable name. If this is confusing, you can call this something else. You can call this n. Okay. In which case it'd be easy enough. We would just say that name is equal to n. Okay. And the tab should bring me over where it needs to be. And all that's fine. Okay. But a more Java way to do this. I can't say name equal name because that's nonsense, right? If this were name up here, we wouldn't know which is which. So what we do when I'm referring to this name up here at the top, I say this name. Okay. So this refers to the calling object. So if I have an account called Bob, then bob.name will be this.name. So this is a variable that refers to whichever object that's calling it. Okay. So here I'm going to say this name is equal to name. Okay. And that's it. That's all we need. We have our accessor, we have our mutator. Okay. So in this case, we're not going to have a constructor yet. Okay, we're just going to go through and test this out first. Okay. So I can save this. The little asterisk there means it's not saved. So let me go back to this one. And now we're going to import our scanner. Okay. And we're going to have, this one does have a public static void main under the class account test. Okay. So under this one, we're going to have a scanner input is equal to new scanner pointing to the system.in. Okay. And then I'm going to create an account object. It's an outlook here. And assign it to the variable my account. Okay. So we're going to say, again, account is the type. My account is going to be our variable name, or our instance name, okay, is going to be equal to new account. Okay. And we're just going to take, again, the default constructor. We're not doing anything. It'll just set it up and put random information in the member data. Okay, there'll be nothing there to begin with. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is display the initial name. We'll see what's in there. On the account, or the initial value of name. Okay. By saying system.out.print f, let's say initial name is %s for the string that we want, %n for a couple of new line characters. Okay. So what are we going to fill that? What are the arguments here? The argument here is going to be my account dot, okay, get name. And yes, that popped up as one of my options. Okay. So I'm going to get from the account what its initial name is. Okay. So we can run this at this point. I need to make sure that I have my input close, input dot close. Okay, let's get rid of that error. I don't know what that's all about. If I just delete that, nope. Yeah, I don't know why it's there. It's weird. Okay, so now let me go ahead and run this to see what this is going to do. See if anything's going to blow up on us. Okay. So here we go. Okay, so a couple of things here. The book talks about you have to make sure that everything is in the same directory, all of your class files. And that's true if you're running from the command line. If you're running from Eclipse, it doesn't matter. These are in the same project. They're saved to the same directory. You don't have to worry about having all your class files together. This takes care of all that. Okay. So let's see what we get. We get null here. Okay. So, and the book talks about when you have initial variables, if you don't have a constructor to set a value, it's equal to null. And what is null? Null gets confusing. Null is philosophical. Null is nothing that knows it's nothing. Okay, it's something that's nothing. It's a way that we can say it's not just the lack of something. It is something, but that something is nothing. It always sounds like foolishness. So it'll make more sense later, hopefully. Okay. So what we really want to do here, since that didn't tell us much, is that we want to, and again, this ran when I got to this line right here. It's this class over here that's running. Okay. So now let's go through and prompt the user for a real name. Okay. So with my prompt, I'm going to be our system.out.print. Again, I don't want a new line character. I want to print, please enter the name, colon, space. Okay. Then I can say string space, the name, we can call it, is going to be equal to input dot. Okay. We're not doing a next int, we're doing a next line. Okay, which we can see pops up in our help. Okay. The input.next line is going to read in a line of text, which allows them, there's a next, I think there's a next string as well, but this allows them to have a space in the name, and that'll be fine, because strings can have spaces. Okay, we'll test that out in a minute. Okay. So once we have that, we can now use this name to add it to the account. So we can say my account, which is the name we've created, dot, and we have, some functions here for sure. We're looking at the set name. Double click on that if I want. Okay. And what I want to set the name to is it defaults correctly to the name. Okay, that's what we want. My account dot set name, the name. Okay. Now I'm just going to print out just a blank line, system.out.print line. Okay. And now I want to display name stored with the account, with my account. Okay. That's going to be the same thing we had up here. So I can copy this. Okay. Paste it there. And we should be good. Okay. So let's run this now. Hit the green arrow. So the initial name is null. We're going to name Bob. Initial name is Bob. Now we stopped. Okay. Let's run it again. And now when we click in the box, let's say it's Big Bob. We're fine. Big Bob's good. Okay. That's because we did the get line there, or the next line. Okay. So again, we were able to get to the value of name through the get name and the set name. Okay. So we can also have a constructor here that does a little bit more for us. Okay. So let's go back to our class to fix some of the issues we just had. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and add our constructor. And I like to put the constructor first. Constructor is going to initialize name with a parameter. Okay, which means we have to send something in. So I'm going to have a public account So a couple things for the constructor. It has no return type. Okay, there's no void, there's no string, just like C++. Okay, it has to be the same name as the name of the class, which we've got. Okay, but this time we're going to send it a variable, string name. And I'm making peace with the brackets that I don't like to make it look like the book. Okay. So again, the same problem. This name refers to the name stored in the object. It's going to be equal to just name by itself, which refers to that one. In fact, you notice that when I typed in name by itself, the name is in orange. Okay. Let's do that again and see if I did it correctly. I wasn't paying attention. Okay. So if I say this.name, okay, it doesn't do anything. But when I say name here, now it highlights that one. Okay. So that's all we're going to do there. That's our constructor. When we try to create a new account, so when this line hits, this line right here hits, okay, it's going to call that constructor function every time. Now we've got an error here. Okay. It says the constructor account is undefined. And the problem we have, it was working before, but now it's not, because we don't have a default constructor. The constructor here takes a name. Okay, so that's different. So now we have to go back and change this one. And now we have to enter the name before we can do anything. So I have to take this and cut that out of there. Paste it up here. So now I have to add the name here. Okay. And now the initial name is going to be, we can still do the rest of this. No, we don't need to. Yeah, we don't need to do that. Okay, so this is taking care of all this. Okay, so now when we pop this up, they have to enter a name before we can create the class. Okay, this should run just like before. Enter the name, Big Bob, and the initial name is Big Bob. Okay. So that allows us to run that function. Okay. So we can also do another test here. In this case, we're going to create a couple of accounts that we're not going to ask the user. It's going to create them. Okay. So we don't need a scanner. This is in the book 2 on page 81. Okay, so this one we're just going to go through. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to say my account 1 is equal. Now over here, notice that this takes a string. Doesn't have to be a variable. So I can just put a string directly. I can just say here, this is Jane Green. Okay. That should all be good. That T there is going to be triple. Inadvertently typed. It's got the same problem there. Notice I can't do the same thing, so I'm doing account 2. I'm going to get rid of those T's. I'm going to call this John Blue. Textbook authors are so creative on their names. Okay. And then I can display the value of name for each account. Okay. So it's going to look basically like this. I'm going to copy that and paste it. But let's just change this to, let's say, name for account 1 is, okay, and over here, name for account 2 is, okay, but we don't have that object anymore. The objects we have here are going to be the account 1. Notice that highlights up in orange. And this is going to be account 2. Okay. Note I'm getting an error down here because we don't have an input, so we can't close the input. Okay. So in this case, we're not reading in the information, but it should still be there. We run this, name for account 1, name for account 2. Okay. So we're still good with that. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about storing some currency. An account would make sense, would have a balance. Okay. So we've used integers before, but this time we're going to use a different kind of number called a double. There are floats and there are doubles, and on the last challenge problem we were doing out of chapter 2, some of you may ran into some issues using the float. We can use a double to store decimal places. Okay. We're eventually going to get, the book talks about, to a different number type that will allow us to store currency better, but for now doubles will be fine. Okay. And what we're going to add to this, again, we have to go back to our class definition. Okay. We're going to go back to here. So we have a name, and now we're going to have another private variable. It's going to be of type double called balance. Okay. So this is another instance variable. It's another attribute. So when we think about the class or the entity account, what does it need to remember? It needs to remember its name and its balance. Okay. What can it do? Right now, it can return the name and it can return and change the name, but it can't do anything else. Okay. Now in our constructor, in addition to having a string name, we have a double called balance. So we're going to set everything up. Okay. So this name is equal to name, and this dot balance is equal to balance. Okay. That's all we're changing there. But we don't want our balance. We want to validate that our balance is greater than 0. Okay. So we can have an if in here, balance is greater than 0.0, because it's a 0 is not a double. 0.0 is a double, okay, because it has a decimal point. Okay. So if this is true, and only if this is true, we can assign it a balance. Okay. What's I like about that? One more of these. That was it. It had one more. Okay. So yeah, there are 2 there. And you can always put comments in here. So this one ends the if, and this one is going to end constructor. Okay. So we're also going to add another function here to deposit. Okay. You probably don't want to be able to set the balance directly. It's probably not a good idea. Okay. So instead, we're going to add a function or a method to deposit only a valid amount to the balance. Okay. So this one's going to be a public function. It's not going to return anything, so it's going to be a void called deposit. It's going to take a double. We're going to call it deposit amount. Okay. So then we can check to see if deposit amount is greater than 0. Well, let me see what it's doing. No, I'm not searching. 0.0. Okay. And I'll let balance equal to the balance that was there before plus deposit amount. Okay. Could I have said this balance? Okay. Same here. Perfectly okay. Okay. We don't need it because there's only one balance there. Okay. But it could be there, would be fine. So if it's a non-zero balance, if it's a bigger than 0 balance, okay, then it's going to return that. So in this case, we're not going to have an accessor, sorry, not going to have a mutator function. We're going to have, this is in place of our mutator function, okay, where we're just going to take it in, okay. But we are going to have another accessor function to return this, okay. It's going to be a public. Not a string, we already had the string. This is going to be a double, public double get balance. Again, you can name it whatever you want. You can name this take out the trash, but it wouldn't make any sense. And you want to reduce your mental load and reduce the need to explain to other people what you're doing by always naming things the same way. Your accessors should always be gets. Your mutators, if they're straight up mutators and just return it, should be sets. Okay. Unless there's a good reason not to. Okay. So in this case, all we're going to do here is going to return balance. Again, I can say this balance if I wanted, but I don't have to. Okay. That's going to be it. Okay. Then going back to this program, I don't want this video to go on forever, so I'm not going to go through this, but it's in the book. Our constructor now would have to have some amount when we start. Okay. So I would have to add, comma 100.32 or 34. Here I would have to add, and notice that I'm getting an error that's now fixed. What if I say -7? Okay. It's okay. It's still going to give us an issue later, but I could say here 234.56. Okay. Now we're good. Okay. And then to test this, I would have to go through and test each of these. Our test program should test any constructors we have, which we only got one. That's what we're doing. It should test the deposit. It should test the get name, the get balance, and the set name. All of those. Okay. The way we should do that. Okay. There's a UML class diagram of what we've added on page 87. Okay. And then section 3.6 is on graphics, which I don't want us to get into yet. It says it's optional. We're just going to skip it for now. Okay. So I want us to get more familiar with our environment before we try to tackle any of the graphics. Okay. So that's it for the new material. As far as the homework goes, see what I've got. I'll put it on Moodle. I haven't yet. I want you to do 3.13, which is creating the employee class. Okay. So for that one, you're going to create a class called employee that includes 3 instance variables. It's going to have a first name, which is a string, a last name, which is a string, and a monthly salary, which is a double. So it's going to be similar to what we just did with the account. So you're going to do a constructor that initializes the 3 variables. You need a set and a get methods, or an accessor and a mutator for each variable. And then if the monthly salary is not positive, do not set its value. Okay. So you're going to write the employee.java. Then you're going to write the employee test.java. Okay. So I may have said before to do the chapter program numbers. That's not going to work in Java. I keep forgetting that Java is weird. So name things what the programs tell you to name them, and that'll be fine. Okay. So you'll need for that one an employee.java and an employee test.java. Okay. And there's some things I want you to do with it. And then 3.14 is a date class. Again, you're going to have a date. And then I assume there's a date test is there as well. Okay. And then in the making a difference section, I want you to do 3.16 on the target heart rate calculator. Okay. So you're going to make a target heart rate class. Okay. So in all of these, you're going to be creating, and again, I haven't put those on Moodle, but I will. On all these, you're going to be creating a class and then a test file that's going to use that class. Okay, you have to make sure those line up. And again, if you're using an IDE, don't worry about that section of the book that talks about making sure the class files are in the same directory, because they're going to be, right? They're going to be in the same directory if that's the case. Okay, so that's what's important there. Okay, so if there are questions, I'll go ahead right now and put on Moodle the assignment for this week, and also the discussion board for this week, the forum and everything else. Okay. And I apologize that things are later than normal this week. Again, lots of technical issues and I was out of town, but that shouldn't be the case next week. So you should expect next Monday to have a new video, and we'll probably meet Thursday next week. So we'll kind of go from there. But for this week, I'll put out a word for sure, but it should be, we'll meet on Friday, probably at 7. Okay. Okay, if you have any questions or anything else, let me know. You can text me, is the best way. Send an email, and hopefully it'll work. If not, I will talk to you guys hopefully on Friday.